Ada King, niece of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., Rabbi Daniel Lapin, founder of the American Alliance of Jews and Christians, Dr. Robert Franklin, president of Morehouse College, and via satellite, Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, president of Initiatives to Change International and grandson of Gandhi. So here's what I want to do. I am beginning to look at Moses in it. I've read the Old Testament this year in a completely different way. I mean, to me, it's on fire right now. Same with the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. So what I want to look at is, I may be going through that, but maybe other people aren't, and maybe other people are kind of stuck in looking at Moses as this guy who is, okay, he climbs up on a mountain, and he's got the big rocks, and they made a calf, and he throws them at, and you can't relate. So let's go through each of these and show me where the revolution is of today that is similar to each of the times. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll start with you, with Moses.
Yes, well, first of all, you don't necessarily have to have the physical apparatus of oppression for there to be an Egypt-like set of circumstances. Egypt is essentially a spiritual oppression because the terrible temptation of tyranny is its almost irresistible seductive allure. And people yield to it even in situations of apparent freedom and luxury, even where the soul is restricted and confined. And what it boils down to, I think, and this is a fundamental Moses lesson, is that the enemy of this ultimate spiritual freedom is the ego. And to make progress, that ego has to be tamed and trained, trounced, and ultimately transcended.
Okay. Doctor?
I think Jesus is railing against everything that separates us from God, which is the definition of sin. And, of course, he preaches a lot about sin and says the answer to that is to return to God. And love is that which reconciles us, closes the distance. So materialism, violence, fear of the other, all of these things can separate us from the love of God. I think one other thing that's important to point out, especially in Gandhi, certainly in the case in Moses, in Jesus, the fasting, the self-denial, the renunciation they practice. Dr. King did some of that, but it wasn't as pronounced, certainly in Jesus and Gandhi. This radical renunciation of bodily desires and food and the like. It's an interesting kind of discipline.
I think that's why I was not picked to do anything. Because it's like, food? No? All right. Let me go to Rajmohan. Tell me, relate to Gandhi. Have people relate to Gandhi and what he taught in a country that is not suffering from colonialism.
But there's so many things all our countries are suffering from corruption, from cruelties, and above all from the division of the world into so many compartments. I think Jesus, and I believe Moses too, but I don't know enough about Moses, but I know a little more about Jesus, and I know a good deal about Gandhi, and I know a fair amount about King. All these, as far as I can see, felt that all humanity was one. And one of the great oppressions of our modern world is this idea that some people in the humanity are okay and others are not okay. And this, as far as Jesus, Moses, Gandhi, King were concerned, all people are my people. And we should have to ask ourselves, are there some people in the world that we don't regard as our people? If the answer to that is yes, then I think all these four would want us to make a change in our attitude.
All right, so let me go here, and may I throw you a curveball here? Professor Gandhi just said, that all people are one, and we separate each other, etc., etc. Dr. Martin Luther King knew that very well. We had separate water fountains, but he still disagreed with people vehemently. I mean, there were people that he vehemently disagreed with him. So there is a separation on thought. But what is the bridge, Dr. King?
For my uncle, the bridge had to be, and would be today, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. the love of God fully embodied in my uncle's shining star, Jesus Christ. And so that's the equalizer, that's the connector, the love of God. He held on to that. And then by the example of Moses, the example of Gandhi, the models and the principles. So the equalizer, the connector, is always going to be the divine love of God. And that's what helped my uncle to be willing to go to the mountaintop. Now, Jesus Christ in bodily form had not been born during the time of Moses, but the principles were there and the promise was there. So the really equalizer is the promise of love, the promise of love.
That's really the... Jesus was love. Moses was love, right?
Well, the challenge, one of the challenges he faced, which I think is certainly something that your uncle faced as well, which is that it was necessary to unify the very people you were trying to help in the first place. It's not as if they all stood up and saluted when you walked onto the scene.
Right.
And that is an enormous challenge.
But nobody did. Did Mahatma Gandhi, was he recognized immediately as everybody's guy?
Not at all. Not at all. And even today there are many people who sharply disagree with him. He wouldn't mind that. He, of course, saw himself as an imperfect human being, and so he welcomed and he felt he needed criticism, he needed improvement. But I would say that that for Gandhi, the common imperfections of humanity, of all of us, was a great equalizer. We all fall short. Every single human being falls short. And that is a tremendous equalizer. And that, of course, is what enables us, requires us to forgive one another. So I would say that the common imperfections of humanity was a tremendous bond that Gandhi believed in.
Okay.
At one point, Dr. King said that Jesus provided the theory that showed us the way of love, but he looked to Gandhi to provide the practical example of how to live it out in the streets during the civil rights movement. So Jesus provides theory in a sense, Gandhi provides practice. And I think that's just a wonderful wedding of an American Christian preacher who learned something important from a Hindu, Gandhi, in his practice of Christian love.
This is starting to sound almost like the Black Robe Regiment.
This is dangerous.
It's dangerous. We start mixing all these people together, and they start talking amongst themselves. Trouble! Back in just a second.